Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another installment of Golondrinas Live Sessions. My name is Laura Gonzalez. I'm the Education and Volunteer Manager here at El Rancho de las Golondrinas Living History Museum. We're located just south of Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the beautiful and historic La Cienega Valley. Joining me today is Las Golondrinas Volunteer Tour Guide and Miller, Jerry Kerr, and we're going to learn all about El Molino Grande, or the Big Mill. So we always say around here, if Las Golondrinas was a carnival, this would definitely be our Ferris wheel. And if you're like most guests who have visited the site, this might be your favorite building here. Now, while El Molino Grande is historic, it's actually not historic to this site. The founders, Mr. and Mrs. Palatino, purchased and relocated this state treasure in the late 1960s from Zapallo, New Mexico. All of the interior milling equipment was replaced, and it began operating when the museum officially opened in 1972. A new handmade oak wheel was even replaced the deteriorated original pine wheel in 1991. This wheel, as you can see, is still an impressive sight to behold and makes quite a bit of noise. It's usually only seen during special museum events, so you're all in for a very special treat today. If you have any questions at all for Jerry during this program, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Jerry Kerr.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you folks for tuning in. The Big Mill is an unusual sight in New Mexico. Most of the time when you see mills in this state, you see small village mills that have water wheels underneath, and that's because New Mexico was never really blessed with a lot of big rivers. Throughout the rest of the country, water wheels like this are fairly common, but not in New Mexico. So how did it get here? It came as a kit from Buffalo, New York in 1880. It was shipped out on the railroad, and the Pacheco family in the town of Zapallo ordered this mill so that they would be able to get one of the contracts to help supply Fort Union with flour. Fort Union was not too far from Zapallo, and it was a main provider for 42 different forts and outposts throughout New Mexico, as far away as Fort Huachuca in Arizona, ports in Fort Garland, Colorado, Texas, and Oklahoma. So these guys spent a good amount of money to have this kit come out from Buffalo, New York, so that they could basically have a government contract for about 10 to 11 years. After the forts closed in 1890 and 1891, one might think that they would have gone downhill. However, Morona County, the county in which they were located, was the richest wheat-producing area in New Mexico, and the years between 1890 and 1910, fortunately, according to the USDA, were the most productive wheat-growing years in New Mexico's history. So these folks did pretty well with their water wheel mill until around World War I, when new milling technology took over and other automotive technology kind of put water wheels like this out of work. In the 1920s, there was FDA approval for bleached white flour, which led to even bigger mills, broader distribution networks, and pretty much the death knell for mills like this. We were fortunate to find it in good shape and move it here to the ranch, and we placed it here at the ranch for a very particular reason, and that is we have a water source that's up the hill about a quarter mile. It's a spring-fed pond, and whenever we do want to run the mill as a demonstration, we can go up and turn on the water, and we've got water to run our mill. The rest of the equipment inside the mill is all hooked to the water wheel through a cog wheel that's connected on the other side of this water wheel. If you can look carefully, you can see the teeth, and if you look down below, you may see where these teeth interconnect with another cog wheel that goes on a shaft into our mill and connects through a clutch, and it runs all of the equipment inside the building. Inside, it's a little bit like a Rube Goldberg setup because we have action that is belt-driven by the water power, and we use gravity feed. So things are moving up down and through inside the water mill. Here we are at the basement of the mill. This is where all the mechanical work has its beginnings. The cogwheel that is connected to the big water wheel hooks into a cogwheel that connects to a clutch and connects all the mechanical parts inside the building. There's a large cogwheel that turns a large shaft that goes up through the first floor and through the second floor and connects to cogwheels in the attic that turn belts that run our grain elevator, our flour elevator, and our sifter. The main drive that drives the grinding stones is right here in the basement, and it's a belt about this wide that stretches from here to the edge of the building and runs the grinding stones. The power of the water wheel, the faster it goes, the faster the wheels will grind inside. We don't try to run it too fast because we don't want to hurt the water wheel by over-stressing it. Okay, here we are outside the front of the mill. This is where all the action happens. When the farmers brought their wheat to the mill, it was harvest time, obviously, and usually there was more than one farmer getting to the mill around the same time. So it was the miller's responsibility and practice to, number one, make a list of who got there first with their wheat, and then number two, contact each farmer in turn as he was about to grind their wheat. Each farmer wanted their own wheat ground. They didn't want their neighbor's wheat ground. So it was important to keep track of what was coming in and where he was along in the process. Once the farmer came in with his wheat, they would weigh it. Then they would barter for the fee. Depending on how much of one particular kind of flour the farmer might want, the fee might be a tad higher. The miller here could generate three kinds of flour. Flora fina, which is the white, fine white flour, a bran flour, and then what we call despejada, which is more of a whole grain. And they would use the white flour for fine baking and things like that. The bran flour would be good for heartier meals. And then the despejada was often used just for animal feed. The farmer would tell the miller, based on his own needs, what he wanted. If he had a lot of children, he might want a lot of bran to be able to feed them breakfast and kind of cream of wheats and things like that. If he was older, maybe he was just him and his wife was a great baker, he might want to get all flora fina because you can make nice fine cakes and pies with flora fina. Anyway, he would give the breakdown to the miller, and then the miller would work on adjusting his stones to meet the demands of the farmer. And how he would know how it was going was that he could reach behind the grinding stones, take a little bit of the unsifted flour, and see how it feels in his hands. That's called the rule of thumb. And it goes back centuries with millers. If the grit that comes out is real gritty and he wants white flour, he's going to adjust the stones more closely. If it's very fine flour that's coming out and he wants more of a bran mixture, then he's going to pull back the stones so that he'll get a little bit more bran. As the unsifted flour comes out the back, it goes up a flour elevator, and then gravity feeds into our sifter. The sifter has 3 sets of screens in one unit, and it's slightly angled downhill, so that as the sifter turns and the flour works its way downhill, it falls through the fine screens first and gives us flora fina. The second set of screens, anything that falls through there is going to be your bran flour, and then the last set of screens are going to give you despejada. It falls through screens and then drops into bags that can be sacked when the flours are full, and then the farmer is pretty much done. The miller's pretty much done with his job. And it would work like that throughout the holiday or the harvest season. At that time, you might see many different farmers gathered around the mill, catching up with their neighbors about how things went over the growing season. And that's pretty much an overview of how this mill would operate into the early 20th century. Thanks for joining us.
Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you enjoyed this wonderful and informative history of El Molino Grande and the history of milling in New Mexico. A very special thank you to Jerry Kerr for taking time out of his day to come and spend some time with us here at the mill. I hope that soon you can come to Las Golondrinas and see the mill running for yourself. Maybe spend a little time with Jerry talking more about the history of milling, or perhaps going on one of his wonderful tours of the site. Make sure to keep up with us on our Facebook and our Instagram for all things Golondrinas, both of them at SF Golondrinas. For anything else, or if you want to reach out to us, make sure to start your adventure at golondrinas.org. And a big happy reminder that these videos, the Golondrinas Live Session series, can be found not only right here on our Facebook page, but also on the Las Golondrinas YouTube channel. Simply go to youtube.com and type in Las Golondrinas channel right there in the search bar. Remember, if you have any questions for us or for Jerry, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.